If you're feeling flat with your art, we are going to talk about how to revive your art today. I have definitely been in this position, and I want to walk you through some really big challenges that I found that you might recognize in yourself. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how to overcome barriers holding you back. And we're going to do that through discovering your why, your deeper why. And I know this might seem really obvious, but hear me out. This has been a game changer for me. And without doing this, I would not be making the art I am making today. And I would not have the bigger picture in my mind of what the goals really were without going through this process myself. So you might find yourself avoiding the studio. This is a common symptom when we're really struggling with intention. You might find that you have lack of motivation. You might find yourself feeling generally unmotivated, not only about starting new projects, but also completing ongoing ones. And this can manifest as procrastination or a feeling of dread when you're thinking about entering the studio. And if you find yourself thinking cleaning and organizing is way more fun, this is actually a sign that you are not really truly connected to your why. You might also feel stuck creatively, feeling like you've run out of ideas or that everything you produce is just not up to standards. And that can lead to frustration in the studio and completely avoiding the studio. And that is a sign of creative block. And sometimes this deeper why is the actual root of it. Sometimes we have these feelings of these pressures of expectations of either self-imposed or from others, and that can be really overwhelming. And you might find yourself avoiding the studio because it feels like a space that's mentally and emotionally stressful rather than creative and expanding your creativity. So you might feel really overwhelmed. Also, a sign that you're really not connected to your deeper why on why you are creating art in the first place. And here's an even more profound thought that I know a few artists out there might be thinking. You might be questioning if you still enjoy making art. You could feel disconnected from the joy that initially drove you to the studio in the first place, making the studio a less appealing place. And this shows up as a sign of loss of passion. But really, there is an underlying issue for this. You might notice that your usual routines in the studio or those usual processes in the studio are not really that exciting and they don't excite you anymore. And what once felt really comforting as a ritual now feels really boring, quite frankly, and uninspiring. And this could be routine fatigue, meaning you're not really into your routine anymore. And when we're not connected to our deeper why, this is definitely a symptom. This is exactly why you need to look at your why. And I'm not saying this because I know all the answers, but I know at times when I have not looked at these deeper answers, I have gotten off track and experienced all these symptoms I had mentioned. So, the bottom line of this is that you've forgotten why your art is your calling in the first place. And when we only scrape the surface of why we're doing our art, it doesn't actually give us true inspiration. So, the second part of this video, we're going to go into how to actually look at your deeper why and the simplicity of it with a few questions that I've asked myself. And I'm going to use myself as an example so that you can follow along and see if this resonates for you. Try this exercise out for yourself and see what it does for you because it really moves me when I think about this for my art and what my art is actually doing for me and my greater purpose. I feel like this is one of those things that people go, I don't know if I really need to do this. So, the topic for today is creating your why statement. First, I want to talk about why I think it's important to do this. A lot of times, when we really don't know why we're actually doing something, it gets really tricky knowing how to navigate those difficult questions that come along the way. And I had been asked to create a why statement. I found myself resisting it. And then I thought, if it's in here, there's probably a good reason. And so when I started looking at the idea of it and really going through it, I got really choked up and then realized, oh my gosh, my why is really big. And so whenever I feel like I'm going to be off track on doing what I said I'm going to do, I'm going to remember that why statement, and it's going to help me make better choices and better decisions. So I continued with the exercise and I started writing a why statement for why I'm making art. And I want to ask you the same thing. And the way this exercise goes, and I'll keep it really short, is you want to just write down, why do I want to make art, or why do I want to make paintings? I open up a Google Doc and I like typing in there because it's easier. You can write on a journal, you can literally type it on a scratch paper, like it doesn't really matter where you're doing it. It's just to get your idea going. And when you write down your answer to your why, so why do I make paintings and my art? Because I love having fun with my art and the freedom I feel from expressing myself freely. I do it for those reasons. I love having fun. I love the freedom. I love being able to express myself. Like that naturally came out. And then if you ask yourself, well, why do you want that? Then you get to look at another level of the why question, which is where it gets powerful. Because as you start doing this more deeply, you get to the actual cause of the why that actually makes you tear up and fight for what you really want. So why do I want fun and freedom and expressing myself freely? And why do I want that? And the answer to that was because I want to spend my days doing something I really enjoy and not working for someone else. And that is my why to that answer. And so if I ask myself another layer of that, well, why do I want that? Because I like being able to choose my days and take control of my life. And I feel like having a voice visually is something that I truly have felt more natural in. And that was my answer there. Sometimes it doesn't always give you a really rock solid answer, I'll be honest. Sometimes I'm like, well, that doesn't really seem that interesting. But if you go a level deeper and I say, well, why do I want that? And the answer to that was because I feel best expressing myself in this way. And it's easier for me to express myself as a visual artist. And I feel like I'm meant to be an artist. That is definitely a why. And then if I look into, well, why do I like expressing myself this easier way? And then I wrote, because I'm an introvert who likes to be alone. I like to play with ideas in my head. I like to do things that I get and no one else doesn't, meaning like I don't mind being alone and I like feeling aligned with my truest self. I really like that. That's an answer to that. And so then I asked, well, why do I want the freedom of being an artist? I want freedom to be myself, completely myself, and not pretend to be anyone else. Like that was another level of, well, why do I want that? And again, this goes deep. And for those of you who are listening to this podcast, I wanted to share this with you because I do like to go deep. And I really feel like our best work comes from really knowing and trusting ourselves. So I want to go deep with you. So I'm going to give you a couple deeper levels of why as my examples. And why do I want to feel completely myself? Which kind of seems like, well, why wouldn't you, right? But why? I don't like pretending. So my answer is I don't like pretending to be someone else. I like being me. I like showing my kids, and now we're getting somewhere. I like showing my kids how they too can be themselves as an example. I like to be that example, that it is okay to be ourselves and do what aligns with us. I love being able to show that to my kids. That gets me right in the heart. I mean, that started to go, ooh, now you're onto something. And this is where you got to dig into these many layers, because I think that's where you start getting into actually what matters to you. Everyone's different. You may not have kids. You may not want to do it for your kids. That's just something I personally resonated to. So your why answer needs to be truly connected to you, not any other person's why. And that's because it won't matter if you pick someone else's why. You need to get to the root cause of your why. And so why do I like to be an example to my kids? Why is that important? And the reason there is because I want to reach my full potential as a person and also show my kids how to reach their full potential. I just feel for me, I will be way more satisfied as a human being if I can do that as my full potential and show my kids how to be their full potential. And as a parent, like that's my wish for them. And why do I want that? The answer there is I don't want to live with regrets that I didn't follow my dreams and live my life aligned and not live to my full potential. And that is scarier than the making of the art. So whenever I get scared about the art or I'm worried about whether people will like it or whatever, like whatever stupid thing comes up for me, if I think of that, like living with regret is scarier than that. And there you have it. That is my deepest source of why. You may not resonate with any of it. So the real heart of this exercise is to just take the simple question, why do you want to make art? And then when you answer that, just say, well, why do you want that? And why do you want that? And I'm going to look, I'm reading a document here just to make sure I didn't miss anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I went 9 layers deep, and it was between the 7th and 9th, or maybe even the 6th and 9th, when I started really getting to the things that actually mattered to me. So take that as your inspiration. And whenever you feel a little off track or you want to go off the rails and not do what you said you wanted to do, if you look at your why, you will always remember what you were born to do and what you're called to do and why you're doing it in the first place. When you know your true why, it changes your perspective. The real reason to get in the studio is there. And it's highly motivating. We're not talking motivation like rah motivation. We're talking like true inspiration. It's personal, and your answer will be different to mine. And I hope that this has been super valuable. And as you discover your answers, definitely connect with me. I would love to hear. And you can find me on Instagram at originart_with_Michele, and that's Michele with 1L. And comment in the YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube. I would love to hear what this did for you and if you found it useful. It has been a true game changer so that when I'm asking myself some really tough questions about my career, about my next step, should I do this or should I do that? I have this true why at the source of those decisions, and it really truly guides me in a way that I have not regretted. See you in the next episode.